the mystery fog, and the link between the drone sightings. In the final weeks of 2024, an unsettling phenomenon began to spread across both the United States and the United Kingdom. Reports surfaced of a strange, dense fog that rolled into towns and cities without warning. Unlike ordinary mist, this fog was often described as having a chemical-like odor, heavy and lingering, unsettling those who encountered it. At first, it appeared to be an unusual weather event, but as sightings grew more frequent, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The fog seemed to appear in direct connection with reports of mysterious drones seen flying overhead in both countries. The first wave of concern arose in New Jersey, where residents began noticing swarms of unexplained drones flying at night, some hovering silently while others moved in rigid formations. These sightings were soon followed by the sudden arrival of an unusual fog that blanketed entire neighborhoods. People began posting their experiences on social media, noting the timing of the events with striking consistency. Shortly after the drones were spotted, the fog would creep in, dense and unnatural. Similar reports soon poured in from other regions of the United States, particularly around military bases, and not long after, identical cases began to emerge in the United Kingdom. The link between the fog and the drones quickly became the focus of speculation. Many began to believe that the drones were dispersing chemicals into the air, creating the fog deliberately. Photographs and videos appeared online showing drones seemingly spraying mist-like trails into the sky, followed shortly by a chemical-smelling haze descending onto the area. This pattern was too consistent for many to dismiss as coincidence, and discussions about the connection began to dominate online forums and community groups. What made the phenomenon more disturbing were the accounts of physical symptoms experienced by those caught in the fog. Numerous individuals reported flu-like conditions soon after exposure. These symptoms included headaches, sore throats, coughing, fatigue, and a general sense of malaise. The similarity of these experiences, spread across different regions and countries, deepened fears that the fog was more than just a natural occurrence. People described how they would step outside to find the air heavy with the sharp scent of chemicals, their eyes watering and throats burning within minutes. For some, the lingering effects lasted for days, convincing them that something harmful was being introduced into the atmosphere. The persistence of the fog only heightened the alarm. Unlike ordinary mist, which typically dissipates with changes in temperature or wind, this haze often lingered long past what residents considered normal. Its sudden appearance immediately after drone sightings and its slow disappearance added to the sense that the phenomenon was being artificially generated. In both rural and urban areas, people began filming and photographing the strange atmospheric conditions, linking them directly to the presence of the drones. Theories began to spread about the purpose behind the fog. Some believed it was part of atmospheric testing, while others suspected it was tied to surveillance or population control. The fact that so many sightings occurred near military installations only intensified speculation. To many, it seemed clear that the drones and the fog were connected in a deliberate way, and the chemical-like odor was proof that something was being introduced into the environment. As the phenomenon continued into early 2025, the mystery only grew deeper. Communities across the United States and the United Kingdom reported increasing numbers of sightings, often accompanied by the same eerie sequence: drones overhead, followed by the sudden emergence of the chemical-smelling fog, and then residents falling ill with flu-like symptoms. The repetition of this pattern across different geographic areas convinced many that this was no ordinary weather event, but rather a coordinated and unexplained operation taking place in plain sight. The fog has since become a symbol of unease, a haunting reminder that not all mysteries lie hidden in history. Its sudden arrival in connection with the drone sightings, its unnatural odor, and the illnesses that followed have left many convinced that the public is witnessing the early stages of something far larger and more complex. The mystery of the fog and its link with the strange drones continues to grip both sides of the Atlantic, raising questions about what is truly unfolding in the skies above and in the air people breathe. The mystery of the antennas. At the beginning of the year 2023, authorities in Utah uncovered a peculiar mystery high in the mountains surrounding Salt Lake City. Officials reported that strange antenna arrays were being discovered on ridges, peaks, and other isolated areas where few people typically venture. What struck investigators most was not only the unusual placement of these devices, but also their increasing frequency. While reports of antennas had begun surfacing more than a year prior, their numbers seemed to escalate dramatically toward the end of the year 2022. One of the most notable discoveries came when officials found an antenna array perched at 7,000 feet, or 2,133 meters above sea level. The sheer effort it would have taken to transport, install, and power such equipment in such a location was staggering. The arrays were not simple structures. They often included antennas, routers, black boxes, and solar panels to keep them running. Hiking to these sites to dismantle them required both stamina and determination, and yet no matter how many were removed, new ones appeared. The central mystery was not just the antennas themselves, but also the complete lack of accountability. No permits had ever been issued for such installations, and no individuals or organizations stepped forward to claim responsibility. This lack of transparency meant that even the most mundane explanations could not be verified. Authorities admitted openly that they had no idea who was behind the installations, leaving the public free to speculate about the purpose of these strange devices. Some of the earliest theories suggested that the antennas were part of an amateur radio emergency data network. Enthusiasts of radio technology have been known to set up experimental equipment in remote places, and the mountain ridges could provide excellent lines of communication. Others put forward the idea that the antennas were designed to track wildlife. Remote antennas could transmit data on animal movement, habitat usage, or migration patterns, which would make sense in the wilderness surrounding Salt Lake City. However, these theories had a flaw. Legitimate scientific projects would require official permits, and none had been granted. As time went on, other possibilities emerged. A popular theory was that the antennas were connected to helium, a form of cryptocurrency that uses wireless hotspots to mine tokens. The antennas, routers, and solar panels seemed to fit the equipment used by cryptocurrency enthusiasts, and the isolated placement could have been an attempt to secure strong connections without interference. However, despite the speculation, there was no evidence directly tying the arrays to helium or any other form of digital mining. 2 years have passed since the antennas first became public knowledge, and the mystery remains just as unsolved today as it was when the first device was discovered. Officials have stopped providing updates, leaving many to wonder whether they are still investigating or whether the matter has simply been abandoned. Residents of Utah, and particularly those familiar with the rugged trails around Salt Lake City, continue to trade stories about stumbling upon unusual structures in the wilderness. The lack of answers only deepens the intrigue, suggesting either that the installations are part of a hidden project or that someone is going to great lengths to keep their activities secret. We have no idea why the Hellenikon Pyramid was built. The Hellenikon Pyramid in Argolis, Greece, remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the ancient world. While pyramids are often associated with Egypt, this Greek structure predates even the earliest Egyptian pyramids, adding an entirely new layer of intrigue. Historians have long debated its purpose, its construction date, and its function, yet definitive answers continue to evade us. Built thousands of years ago, with some experts placing its origins as far back as 2720 BC, the Hellenikon Pyramid poses extraordinary questions about the capabilities and cultural practices of the people who constructed it. If the dating is accurate, the pyramid is significantly older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. This fact alone leaves archaeologists astounded. Constructing such a monument at such an early time suggests a level of engineering and organization that is remarkable for the period. The ancient Greeks of that era are not known to have had the architectural resources, tools, or methods that would typically allow for the building of such a structure. Yet the Hellenikon Pyramid stands, its stone walls weathered but still intact after nearly 5 millennia, as a silent witness to a past we do not fully understand. The greatest puzzle surrounding the Hellenikon is not only how it was built, but why. Unlike the Egyptian pyramids, which are widely accepted as monumental tombs for pharaohs, the Greek pyramid does not offer any clear evidence of its intended use. Excavations of the site have not uncovered human remains, treasures, or artifacts that would suggest it was constructed as a burial site. This absence of material culture leaves scholars with only theories. One widely held theory is that the pyramid was constructed to commemorate a great battle. Some historians believe that an important conflict occurred near Argolis, and the pyramid was erected as a memorial or temple to honor the fallen. Its unusual shape and design could have symbolized strength, endurance, or a gateway to the divine. Yet the lack of inscriptions or carvings leaves this idea speculative. Without direct evidence, the true function of the pyramid remains lost to time. Others suggest that the pyramid may have been used as a watchtower or fortress, given its location and shape. Its design could have provided both shelter and visibility across the surrounding plains. However, again, no definitive proof supports this interpretation. Unlike later Greek structures, which were richly decorated with art and inscriptions, the Hellenikon pyramid is stark, silent, and mysterious, offering no clues as to its creator's intentions. What makes the mystery even more fascinating is that the pyramid seems to have been abandoned not long after it was constructed. Over the centuries, it fell into ruin, and later civilizations made no effort to preserve or repurpose it. This abandonment suggests that its purpose may have been tied to a specific event or moment in history, a singular occurrence that justified its creation but was not needed again. Today, the Hellenikon pyramid stands as a reminder of how much of human history is still hidden from us. It challenges our understanding of ancient Greece, pushing us to reconsider what was possible thousands of years ago. Was it truly a memorial to a forgotten battle, a watchtower of strategic importance, or something entirely different? Until more evidence emerges, the pyramid remains an unsolved mystery, an ancient riddle carved in stone. For now, the Hellenikon pyramid continues to inspire curiosity and awe. It stands as proof that even in the heart of Greece, far from the sands of Egypt, the human drive to create monumental structures has deep and ancient roots. The unanswered questions surrounding its construction and purpose ensure that the pyramid will remain one of history's most intriguing mysteries, a silent monument to a forgotten chapter of the ancient world. The Lost Colony of Greenland. The mystery of the lost colony of Greenland is one of history's strangest mysteries, and it's one that has puzzled and fascinated scholars and explorers for centuries. The Norse, who first settled Greenland around the 10th century, built farms, churches, and communities on the harsh, unforgiving land. For roughly 500 years, they maintained their colony, braving the cold, isolated environment with resilience and determination. Then, in the late 15th century, the colony simply vanished. What had once been a thriving outpost of Norse civilization disappeared without a trace of its inhabitants, leaving behind tools, structures, and belongings as though the people had slipped silently from history. The settlement of Greenland by the Norse was an extraordinary achievement in itself. Led by Eric the Red, Norse settlers carved out a living in the rugged fjords, establishing what became known as the Eastern and Western settlements. For generations, they raised cattle, sheep, and goats, traded with Europe, and even built stone churches, evidence of which still stands today. They endured long winters, limited farmland, and the challenges of isolation, yet they persevered. For centuries, ships occasionally carried supplies and visitors between Greenland, Iceland, and Norway, tying the colony to the greater Norse world. But by the end of the 15th century, these settlements were abandoned. Archaeologists and historians who later examined the remains of the farms were struck by the sense of order in the abandonment. Tools were left behind, household items remained, and the churches still stood. But there were no signs of violence, burning, or hurried flight. It seemed as though the people had departed in a measured and deliberate manner, vanishing from their homes with little trace of where they had gone. One theory suggests that environmental change played a central role. The timing of the colony's disappearance coincided with the onset of the Little Ice Age, a period of colder climates that gripped the northern hemisphere. The Greenlandic fjords, once marginally suitable for farming, became increasingly inhospitable. Shorter growing seasons, harsher winters, and encroaching sea ice may have made survival untenable. The colonists may have chosen to abandon Greenland for more temperate lands, either returning to Iceland and Norway or seeking opportunities elsewhere. Another theory points to pressure from the Inuit, the indigenous people of Greenland, who had long adapted to the region's extremes. Some accounts suggest there may have been conflicts between the Norse and Inuit, with raids and skirmishes straining the colony's fragile resources. Yet archaeological evidence shows little to suggest violent encounters at the abandoned sites. Instead, many scholars believe that if the Inuit played a role, it may have been through competition over resources rather than outright attacks. A further possibility is that the Norse simply lost contact and support from Europe. For centuries, they relied on occasional supply ships from Norway and Iceland, bringing goods they could not produce themselves. By the 15th century, political turmoil and disease in Europe, including a devastating plague, may have cut off this lifeline. With fewer ships crossing the Atlantic, the Greenland settlers could have felt isolated, abandoned, and compelled to seek a new life elsewhere. Some historians even suggest that the colonists may have seen opportunity in Europe itself. The plague that swept through Iceland and Norway in the late 15th century left many farms empty. Returning home to reclaim land in their ancestral countries may have seemed preferable to clinging to a difficult existence in Greenland. In this view, the colonists did not vanish mysteriously, but simply blended back into Scandinavian society, their story lost to time. Perhaps the strangest aspect of the disappearance is the sheer tidiness of it. The unsolved mystery of Skye Budnick. The disappearance of Skye Budnick remains one of the most perplexing missing persons cases in recent history. A woman from Connecticut, Skye's sudden and unexplained journey to Japan in April 2008 raised alarm among her loved ones. What makes this case particularly mysterious is that she left with little to nothing, did not inform her family of her plans, and was never seen again after April 7, 2008. Despite her family's determined efforts to retrace her steps, no conclusive evidence has surfaced regarding her fate. Skye departed from the United States on April 1, 2008, without telling anyone she was going to Japan. This decision was unusual and out of character, especially given that she had been struggling in school and experiencing personal difficulties. Her sudden departure left her family shocked and concerned, as there had been no indication that she had been planning such a trip. Even more puzzling was the fact that her family had no idea how she could afford the expensive plane ticket. This raised unsettling questions. Did she have outside help, or was there someone in Japan waiting for her? After realizing Skye was missing, her sister, Megan Budnick, and her mother, Susan Budnick, traveled to Japan in an effort to find her. Their investigation revealed that Skye had booked a stay at an inn on April 7, 2008. During her time there, she informed the staff that she planned to travel to Sapporo, a city in northern Japan. This information provided her family with a crucial lead, yet it ultimately led nowhere. No further sightings or records of her whereabouts exist beyond that date, and the trail went cold. In the days before her disappearance, Skye's movements resembled those of an ordinary tourist. She visited spas, stayed at inns, and even spent time at a hot springs resort. These actions suggested that she was not in distress and that she was intentionally exploring Japan. However, despite these seemingly normal behaviors, her disappearance remains shrouded in mystery. If she had been planning to stay in Japan long-term, why had she not informed anyone of her plans? One of the most concerning aspects of Skye's disappearance is the language barrier she likely faced while in Japan. Although she had studied the Japanese language for 3 years, her family believed her fluency was limited. Traveling alone in a foreign country without strong language skills can be extremely challenging, particularly when navigating unfamiliar environments, social interactions, and accommodations. This could have placed her in a vulnerable position, making it possible that she encountered difficulties that led to her vanishing. Her personal struggles prior to her disappearance further complicate the case. According to her sister Megan, Skye was struggling with school, sleeping excessively, and failing her classes. She refused to seek medical attention despite these difficulties, which suggests that she may have been experiencing emotional distress. Her sudden journey to Japan could have been an attempt to escape her troubles, or it may have been connected to a deeper personal crisis. However, without additional information, it is impossible to determine whether her disappearance was intentional, accidental, or the result of foul play. The lack of financial clarity surrounding her trip is another strange detail in this case. Her family does not know how she managed to afford the costly plane ticket, nor do they know if she had additional funds to sustain herself in Japan. This raises critical questions about whether she was in contact with someone who assisted her financially, or if she had made prior arrangements that her family was unaware of. If someone was waiting for her in Japan, it is possible that they hold key information about her disappearance. Despite search efforts, inquiries with Japanese authorities, and widespread media coverage, no concrete leads have emerged. It is as if Sky vanished without a trace. The lack of evidence has only fueled speculation about what truly happened to her. Some believe she may have chosen to disappear voluntarily, seeking a fresh start away from her struggles. Others fear she may have fallen victim to foul play, especially considering the dangers that lone travelers can face in unfamiliar countries. With no sightings or confirmed evidence since April 7, 2008, Sky Budnick's disappearance remains an unresolved mystery. Her family continues to seek answers, holding out hope that one day they will learn the truth about what happened to her. Until then, her case stands as a haunting reminder of how someone can seemingly vanish without explanation, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and endless uncertainty. The Unsolved Mystery of Marco Aurelio Bezerra Bossager Simon. The disappearance of Marco Aurelio Bezerra Bossager Simon remains one of Brazil's most mysterious and baffling unsolved cases. At just 15 years old, Marco Aurelio was an enthusiastic and happy teenager who had recently become a senior scout. His excitement for an upcoming trip to Pico dos Marins, a mountain standing 2,400 meters high in Sao Paulo, was undeniable. He had planned to go with his twin brother, Marco Antonio, but fate intervened when Marco Antonio fell ill and was unable to accompany him. What was meant to be a memorable adventure with his scout group quickly turned into a tragic mystery that has haunted his family and investigators for decades. On the morning of their departure, Marco Aurelio's father, Ivo Simon, and his twin brother accompanied him to the train station, where he met up with his scout leader, Juan Bernabeu Cespedes, and 3 other senior scouts, Ricardo Salvione, Osvaldo Lobeiro Machado, and Ramatis Rome. The group was in high spirits as they set off for their excursion to Pico dos Marins, completely unaware that this would be the last time Marco Aurelio would ever be seen. Upon reaching their base camp, the group was welcomed by Afonso, a local guide who offered them a space to settle in. Shortly after setting up their tents, the boys went for a swim in the river. However, when they returned, they found their camp in disarray. Scout leader Juan asked Afonso if he had seen anything suspicious, but the guide dismissed the disturbance, attributing it to local dogs. That night, the boys gathered around a bonfire, sharing stories and laughter, looking forward to the hike the next morning. Yet something felt strange. Osvaldo, one of the scouts, later recalled that he felt watched throughout the night. He even saw a shadow moving near his tent, and at one point, Juan reported hearing someone or something hitting his tent, only to find nothing when he stepped outside. The unsettling feeling lingered, but the group brushed it off, assuming it was a harmless prank by Afonso's son. The following morning, after having breakfast and preparing their gear, the group began their ascent. The trail to the top of Pico dos Marins takes between 4 to 6 hours, and while the climb is challenging, it does not require special equipment. Marco Aurelio, despite having been born prematurely and being small in stature, was physically capable of keeping up with the group. However, as they ascended to approximately 1,200 meters in height, an unexpected accident changed the course of their trip forever. Osvaldo stepped into a hole and injured his knee, making it impossible for him to continue walking. The group, led by Juan, decided to improvise a stretcher to carry Osvaldo back to camp. At this moment, Marco Aurelio made a fateful decision. Believing he could reach camp faster and get help more efficiently, he insisted on going ahead alone. Osvaldo protested, arguing that they should all stay together, but Juan allowed Marco to go. To ensure he could find his way, Juan instructed Marco to mark stones along the path with the number 240, the identifier of their Olivetan scout group. The group watched as Marco disappeared down the trail, fully expecting to reunite with him at camp. As the group carried Osvaldo down the mountain, they found 3 stones marked by Marco, proof that he had followed the trail as instructed. However, when they reached a fork in the road, they realized Marco had taken the left path, which was more difficult to navigate with an injured person. Juan then made a crucial decision. Instead of following Marco's path, he led the group along the right trail, assuring the boys that both paths would reconnect later. This information was incorrect. By choosing the longer route, they delayed their return to camp significantly, arriving at 5 the next morning, and this was after enduring sub-zero temperatures throughout the night. Expecting to find Marco waiting for them at camp, they were met with a chilling discovery. Marco was not there. There were no signs that he had made it back. Some accounts even claim that his backpack was found open outside his tent, though this detail remains debated. At sunrise, Juan searched for Marco for 5 hours, but when he found no trace of him, he finally reported his disappearance to the authorities. What followed was one of the largest search operations in Brazilian history. For 28 days, over 300 people, including soldiers, police officers, firefighters, climbers, and experienced bushmen, combed the rugged terrain in search of any clue. Helicopters, search dogs, and even an Air Force plane were deployed, yet not a single piece of evidence was found. Even psychics and fortune tellers were consulted, but Marco Aurelio had seemingly vanished into thin air. Adding to the mystery, on the very day Marco went missing, his mother had a strong feeling that something was wrong. While she was at a ranch in another city, she became overwhelmed with anxiety and insisted that her family return home. She began calling Juan's family and the other scouts, desperately seeking information about her son's whereabouts, hours before she even knew he was missing. Despite the exhaustive search efforts, no traces of Marco Aurelio have ever been found. Not a piece of clothing, an item from his backpack, or any remains were ever discovered. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged. Some believe he got lost and perished in the wilderness, while others speculate he was taken or encountered something sinister. The strange disturbances at camp the night before, the shadowy figures seen by Osvaldo, and the feeling of being watched all add eerie elements to an already chilling case. To this day, Marco Aurelio's fate remains unknown. His family, friends, and former scout companions continue to search for answers, but with each passing year, the mystery deepens. His disappearance is a haunting reminder of how someone can vanish without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and lingering sorrow. The unsolved case of the burrowing burglars. The mystery of the burrowing burglars remains one of the most fascinating and perplexing crime stories in American history. The sheer level of planning, engineering, and precision that went into these heists left law enforcement stunned. The burglars executed one of the most elaborate and well-orchestrated bank robberies ever seen, utilizing underground tunnels and storm drains to gain access to bank vaults without detection. Their skill in tunneling through reinforced concrete floors, their ability to evade capture, and their sudden disappearance from the criminal world have left investigators searching for answers decades later. The first burglary took place on June 6, 1986, at the First Interstate Bank in Hollywood, California. At 8 in the evening, the bank's alarm system was triggered, prompting a police officer to investigate. Finding no signs of forced entry, the officer left without suspecting anything unusual. However, on Monday morning, when bank employees arrived for work, they discovered that something extraordinary had happened. The vault had been breached from beneath the floor, and over $2 million in cash, jewelry, and rare coins had vanished. The thieves had tunneled 30 yards from a nearby street, managing to end up precisely beneath the vault, a feat that showcased incredible precision and patience. Authorities were astonished at the level of engineering expertise required to complete the job. The tunnel had been carefully dug, using hand tools and electric-powered drills to slice through 18-inch thick steel-reinforced concrete. The robbers had dug 95 feet from a storm drain to the bank, with the tunnels being 3.5 feet wide and 4.5 feet high. Experts in construction and underground work noted that the tunnels were dug with a level of precision that suggested professional experience. Investigators believed the thieves had used Los Angeles' vast underground storm drain system to avoid detection while working. Despite an extensive search of the underground tunnels, no evidence was found, and it appeared that the burglars had pulled off the perfect crime. 14 months later, on August 22, 1987, another similar heist was attempted at a Bank of America in West Los Angeles. At approximately 2 in the morning, the alarm system was triggered, prompting the police to investigate. When the assistant bank manager arrived, they found that the vault had been broken into, but this time, the burglars had been interrupted mid-robbery and had fled the scene. Although they managed to steal $90,000, the amount paled in comparison to their previous multi-million-dollar haul. The police discovered an 18-inch hole cut through the concrete floor, identical to the one in the first interstate bank robbery. Unlike the previous heist, the burglars left behind evidence. Investigators found their tools, some work clothes, and an 18-inch core bit, a diamond-tipped cutting tool used for drilling through concrete. The tool had been purchased in the San Francisco Bay Area by a construction company using a fake name and address in San Diego, with payment made in cash. Further searches led to the discovery of a four-wheel vehicle, a quadrunner, inside a storm drain entrance 3 miles from the bank. Investigators suspected that the burglars had used these vehicles to transport their heavy equipment through the underground tunnels. Law enforcement believed that at least 2 men were involved in the heists, possibly former army buddies, given their ability to work long hours in confined spaces. Additionally, it was suspected that a third accomplice was involved, someone positioned outside the bank to monitor security systems and alert the others if anything went wrong. Footprints found in the tunnels indicated that one of the burglars ran barefoot while the other wore only socks, likely in an effort to minimize noise. Investigators also discovered another tunnel that had been dug toward a bank in Beverly Hills. This 102-foot-long tunnel ended directly beneath the bank's vault, and mounting bolts for a drill press had already been installed. Had the burglars completed this job, they could have stolen between $10 million and $10 million, making it one of the most lucrative bank heists in history. Authorities eventually linked the quadrunner to a mysterious individual using the alias David Spaulding, who had purchased 5 of these vehicles from a dealer in Hollywood. Investigators created composite sketches of this man based on descriptions from sales associates. He was described as a rugged-looking Caucasian male, approximately 35 years old and around 6 feet tall. Despite this lead, no arrests were ever made. After the failed Bank of America heist, no further tunnel-based bank robberies were reported, leading authorities to believe that the burrowing burglars had ended their criminal careers. There were several theories as to why they stopped. One possibility was that they feared getting caught, especially after the West Los Angeles job nearly led to their apprehension. However, a more plausible explanation was that the risk was no longer worth the reward. The second robbery had taken weeks of planning, yet their take was only $90,000, a significant downgrade from their previous heist. The case of the burrowing burglars remains unsolved, and their true identities have never been confirmed. The unsolved mystery of Trevelyan Evans. The disappearance of Trevelyan Evans remains one of the most puzzling and unsettling missing persons cases in modern British history. In 1990, the 52-year-old antiques dealer vanished without a trace from her shop in Llangollen, Wales, leaving behind a handwritten note on her door stating she would be back in 2 minutes. Despite extensive investigations, forensic advancements, and public appeals, her fate remains unknown, and the case continues to haunt those who remember her. Trevelyan Evans had been enjoying a seemingly normal and contented life before her disappearance. She had recently spent a week near the coast at Rhuddlan with her husband Richard, who was working on renovations for their holiday bungalow. There were no indications of distress or problems in her personal life, and by all accounts, she was happy, relaxed, and had plans for the future. On the morning of Saturday, June 16, 1990, she opened her shop, Attic Antiques, on Church Street at 9:30 in the morning, just as she did every day. The town of Llangollen was busy that day, with warm weather and a steady flow of customers. Trevelyan had been seen by around 25 friends and customers, all of whom reported that she seemed in good spirits. She had parked her dark blue Ford Escort estate 200 yards away, and everything about her day appeared routine. At approximately 12:40, something changed. Trevelyan left a note on her shop's front door, stating she would be back in 2 minutes. A mystery man, described as smartly dressed, was reportedly seen talking to her inside the shop shortly before she left the note. This man was never identified or traced, leading to endless speculation about his role in her disappearance. Shortly after leaving, Trevelyan was seen buying an apple and a banana, and she was spotted crossing Castle Street. Later, a banana skin was discovered in the shop's dustbin, leading investigators to believe that she must have returned to the shop at some point. However, no one witnessed her doing so, and this detail remains unconfirmed. Inside Attic Antiques, all of Trevelyan's personal belongings were left untouched. Her handbag, car keys, jacket, fresh fruit and flowers, all items she had intended to take home, remained in the shop, suggesting she had never planned to be gone for long. Her car also remained parked where she had left it, further deepening the mystery. The last confirmed sighting of Trevelyan was near her home on Market Street at 2:30 in the afternoon. 2 additional sightings were reported, but neither was ever fully confirmed. The first, at 2:35, described a woman matching her description walking out of town along the A5 towards Corwin, beside Riverside Park. The second, at 30:45 in the afternoon, placed a similar-looking woman walking into Park Avenue from the direction of the River Dee. These possible sightings fueled various theories, but no definitive link to Trevelyan was ever established. The investigation into her disappearance was one of the most extensive in the region. Over 1,500 names were checked, and 700 cars were eliminated from suspicion. Authorities searched the River Dee, local canals, mine shafts and caves, yet no trace of Trevelyan was ever found. Police released an artist's impression of the unidentified man in the blazer, hoping to generate leads. Despite these efforts, the case quickly grew cold. In January 2001, more than a decade after Trevelyan's disappearance, police reopened the case in the hopes that new forensic techniques could provide fresh leads. This revival of the investigation brought renewed attention to the case, leading to the arrest of Trevelyan's husband, Richard, in June 2001. However, after questioning, he was released without charge, and no evidence was ever found to link him to her disappearance. The police also ruled out the original artist's impression of the man seen with her before she vanished, concluding that the description was no longer accurate. One of the most chilling aspects of Trevelyan's disappearance is that no money was ever withdrawn from her bank account. Typically, in cases where individuals voluntarily disappear, there is at least some financial activity, but in Trevelyan's case, her accounts remained completely untouched. This suggests that she did not leave on her own accord, and that something, or someone, prevented her from returning. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged regarding what might have happened to Trevelyan. Some believe she may have known the individual, possibly meeting with someone she trusted before something went terribly wrong. Others suggest she may have been the victim of an opportunistic crime, taken by a stranger who exploited the brief moment when she was alone. A more sinister possibility is that Trevelyan had unintentionally discovered something she wasn't meant to see. Some investigators have speculated that her antiques business may have led her into contact with dangerous individuals involved in stolen goods or illicit trade. However, no solid evidence has ever emerged to support this theory. To this day, Trevelyan's fate remains unknown. She vanished in broad daylight, leaving behind no signs of struggle, no financial activity, and no clear explanation. Her case has remained one of Wales's most enduring mysteries, with friends, family, and investigators still searching for answers. Despite the passing decades, hope persists that one day, the truth about what happened to Trevelyan Evans will be uncovered. Whether she was met with foul play, staged her disappearance, or fell victim to an unknown tragedy, her disappearance continues to haunt the quiet town of Llangollen. With modern advancements in forensic science and renewed interest in cold cases, there is always the possibility that new evidence may one day bring closure to this deeply unsettling mystery. The Betty and Barney Hill Incident. On the evening of September 19, 1961, just after 10:30 in the evening, Barney and Betty Hill, husband and wife, were returning by car from their vacation at Niagara Falls to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Betty claims that she saw an odd point of light going somewhere just south of Lancaster, first from across what was Jupiter in the night sky, and then from beneath the moon. Betty was left to ponder this odd aerial illumination as Barney, who was driving, went on up US Route 3. It must be a comet or a falling star, she thought. She rejected this idea, though, when it started to grow larger after moving vertically. She would convince Barney to halt the car so she could examine it more closely. He pulled up to a picnic spot at the foot of Twin Mountain, figuring their dog, Delcy, probably needed a little stroll. Betty would take a set of binoculars from the car and study the odd light ahead and in front of her while Barney walked Delcy. Through their magnifying lenses, she would practically gasp when she saw a strangely formed UFO. She could clearly see various colored lights flashing across the exterior of this strange vehicle at different points as it passed in front of the moon. Like her sister had claimed to witness years earlier, she would call her husband and pass the binoculars to him, asking if he believed it to be a flying saucer. Barney searched for a while, and he would maintain that it was just a commercial aeroplane, but he would reconsider this as the craft abruptly veered off course and approached their position. Furthermore, this item traveled incredibly quickly, and later on, he would refer to the thing as a plane that wasn't actually a plane. The Hills and their dog hurried back into the vehicle, but at this point, they were both a little uneasy now. They would drive the vehicle towards Franconia Notch along a desolate stretch of road. The thing was still following them, and although it was still a long way off, it was getting closer every second. The object was now so close that Betty could see it moving and turning. She would put its length at about 40 feet. Occasionally, it would vanish behind the roads bordering mountain ranges before resurfacing in plain view. This odd, flashing device would not make any noise at all. The spaceship would then abruptly drop in front of the Hills car in the middle of the road after a few minutes. To stop their car, Barney would use the brakes. The craft was so big that it encompassed the pair's field of vision, even though it was still only around 100 feet above the ground. No sound emanated from this pancake-shaped vehicle, even at this close range. Barney stepped out of the car, trembling, making sure he had his revolver in his pocket. He started to approach this odd, giant object with the same caution. Occasionally, he would pause and lift the binoculars to his eyes. Along the front of the craft, he could see a row of windows. He was completely taken aback when he noticed that 8 or 11 humanoid individuals appeared to be standing and gazing out of these windows. Then, all of the humanoid figures would move, save for one who stayed at the glass. Barney could see what seemed like a panel in the rear of the craft. Now everyone gathered here except for the lone thing at the window, as though anticipating something. This one thing, in a shiny black uniform like the others, kept staring straight at Barney. Then he heard a voice within his head. It said, "Stay where you are and keep looking." Abruptly, a flurry of activity unfolded. A massive structure started to protrude from the craft's underside. Simultaneously, odd red lights that seemed to be wings started to emerge from the enormous thing and descend to the earth where he was standing. This is when he realized these creatures were somehow not human, as he would later remember. "They're going to catch us!" he would yell as he turned and ran back towards the car, yelling at Betty. Barney would start the engine by turning the ignition key. The thing passed right over their automobile as he was doing it. Barney put a lot of pressure on the accelerator and drove as fast as he could. Betty would turn and try to see what the frightful thing was. Her passenger window would be cranked down. As soon as she did, strange and unsettling buzzing and beeping sounds could be heard by both her and Barney. Each of their bodies had an odd feeling, and the car seemed to vibrate sympathetically in response to the odd sounds coming from outside. All of them experienced a sudden dullness that was strange to them. Additionally dampened were their thoughts and perceptions of their environment. They felt that they didn't have complete control. The Hills were abruptly brought back to reality by the eerie beeping and buzzing noises. Despite not knowing where they were, Barney's hands remained on the steering wheel. Later on, they would find that they were about 35 miles south of where they had been in the Ashland region. The fact that neither of them could remember how they got here was even more unsettling. Their final recollection was of winding down the windows and hearing odd sounds. For each of them, the only clear memory they had was of turning a sharp corner. They would run across a roadblock there, and just in front of them, in the center of the road, a blazing orb. The fact that it was soon after daybreak when they got home was even more disturbing and perplexing to them all. They should have arrived there more than 2 hours earlier. As a result, they were unable to recall not just the 30 miles of their excursion, but also the entire 2 hours of it, and this was just the beginning of the strange memories and actions that would haunt the Hills for the next 10 days until they eventually turned to UFO investigators for help. For instance, their watches had all stopped functioning. The timepieces in question would actually never function again. There was a peculiar pink powder on Betty's ripped dress. Barney was looking at the object with binoculars when the leather strap was ripped off, but he had no recollection of how the injury had occurred. Additionally, He observed that his best dress shoes had severe scraping on the toes. However, there were even more bizarre and sinister actions. The necessity for frequent bathing was even weird for each of the hills, like they were somehow tainted. It seemed as if there had been some kind of harm there that he couldn't remember. Meanwhile, Betty lived in a condition of silent anxiety all the time. She would leave the Hills family's packed bags by the back door. For whatever reason, the suitcases were prepared to be thrown directly into the automobile outside in the event that they had to make an abrupt and urgent escape. There would be more mysteries and questions around the automobile itself. For instance, there were multiple concentric circles on the stem, each of which shone quite vividly. Before the odd drive home, Betty and Barney were both certain they weren't there. Barney would observe that the compass needle would spin erratically when he held it near the odd circles. The needle returned to normal as soon as he moved the compass away. The two would try to retrace their travels on the night in question as the days passed, growing more perplexed and irritated at their inability to remember their experience. But each of their recollections would abruptly go away as soon as they woke up to the bizarre beeping and buzzing sounds and Betty winding down the window. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to recall what transpired next. They appeared to have a deliberate mental block in place. The Hills would eventually continue to search for solutions as a result of this apparent mental block. In the end, this would lead to hypnotic regression therapy, the first in a UFO case, maybe. 2 days following the encounter, on September 21st, Betty would contact the neighboring Pease Air Force Base. She wanted to report the occurrence, but she was afraid of being called insane or ridiculed. As a result, she would first omit some information, but Major Paul Henderson would get in touch with the Hills the next day and set up a more thorough report. By September 26th, they had concluded that the Hills had most certainly mistaken Jupiter. The military would repeatedly alter the mistaken object as UFO studies continued over the years and came to a broad conclusion on the veracity of the Hills' story. The judgment that there was not enough data was possibly the most telling of these. However, the original report would finally end up in Project Blue Book, the military's UFO investigation division. Betty Hill, who had read Henderson's book on the UFO topic, would get in touch with Major Donald Kehoe on the same day that Henderson would publish his conclusions regarding the Hills incident. She would describe the event as thoroughly as her memory permitted. She would also say that she and her husband were thinking of hypnotic regression since they were desperate to remember exactly what had occurred to them. Walter Webb, a UFO researcher, would finally receive this letter. Webb would set up a meeting with Barney Hill and Betty. About a month after the encounter, on October 21st, the meeting was held. It would be a 6-hour interview. Similar to the Hills, Webb would express his opinion that they were unable to fully remember the incident because of a deliberate mental block. Webb believed that Betty and Barney Hill were telling the truth, even though there was still a lot to uncover. Furthermore, the incident most likely happened exactly as described. Betty started having vivid and terrifying dreams about 10 days following the encounter, which was still a few weeks before the Hills met Webb. Aside from the fact that they were intense and weird, what is really strange about them is that they would go on for 5 nights in a row before abruptly ceasing once more. They would never be the same for her again. Could this be an indication of external manipulation and the instigation of such fantasies? Or is it possible that the subconscious mind would permanently erase such strange memories after sorting them out? Somewhere close to the now abandoned car, she and Barney would be strolling through a forest in the dreams. Barney was behind her, and she was ahead. On either side of each was one of the weird things. These things all wore dark, glossy uniforms and headgear of the same color. As Barney had explained, they were able to see through the binoculars. They stood about 5 feet taller than she and Barney, but their eyes were really black, and their skin was a weird grey. She would frequently remember ascending a sizable slope that led from a massive disc-shaped object that loomed over them. Barney and her would be parted. Strangely, a person Betty would frequently call the leader would tell her that it would take longer to conduct the exams if they remained together. She would remember pacing the room. She would occasionally pick up a book with odd symbols printed on its pages. A thorough star map illustrating their origins would also be provided by the leader upon her request. After that, there was a dispute. They returned the Hills to their vehicle. The commander claimed that the other men wanted them to forget what had happened. The hypnotic regression sessions would come years later, but Betty in particular would experience chronic illnesses, anxiety attacks that would appear out of nowhere. Additionally, she would be forced to keep the packed suitcases by their home's door due to a sense of readiness. Barney Hill and Betty Hill would drive to the spot where they originally saw the odd craft on a regular basis. They hoped that these visits would help them recall things. The Hills would see Captain Ben Sweat, who had discussed hypnosis at the Hills' local church in November 1962, more than a year after the encounter. They would discuss their experience with him and inquire as to whether hypnosis may reveal their ostensibly concealed recollections. Sweat acknowledged that it might, but he would claim he was not qualified to hypnotize them in this way. Additionally, he would caution against utilizing novices or charlatans, but in the ensuing years, he would continue to live near the Hills. Sweat would play a significant role in preparing the Hills for their eventual hypnosis sessions. Barney wasn't as sure, but Betty was keen to proceed with hypnotic regression, but he thought it would benefit his wife. She appeared to be having a lot harder time adjusting to the strange and transformative event than he was. In fact, at first, he would not believe her dreams. Around this time, in the latter part of 1963, Betty and Barney Hill would discuss their experience at local UFO meetings and groups on multiple occasions. They would meet with Benjamin Simon by December 1963. The first regression session would start on January 4, 1964, following a number of preparatory meetings. They would continue until that year's June. To avoid influencing one another, Simon would conduct each hypnotic session on the Hills in secret and independently. Even though Barney first treated the sessions and the encounter in general with indifference, Simon would surmise that this outside demeanor concealed a profound worry that he harbored on the inside. In light of this, he would start by regressing Barney. The outcomes were instantaneous. Barney had real horror and terror as he remembered the bizarre things he saw through the binoculars and how they were staring back at him. He would remember that he had been so scared during the encounter that he had largely kept his eyes closed. He had said that the binocular's strap had snapped as he tore it from his face as he turned to flee for the automobile. Barney could vividly remember seeing the strange UFO in the distance behind them and drove away from it. Then his recollection became both fascinating and unsettling. He got an impulse to pull the automobile off the road, into the woods, and onto a dirt road for unknown reasons. Before 6 men emerged in the middle of the road, he would continue to drive along this peaceful stretch. However, the automobile stalled and stopped just in front of the gathering before he could stop it. The automobile was approached by 3 of the men. He remembered a voice in his head encouraging him not to be afraid of them. Barney would be instructed to close his eyes by the men's commander. He would remember that I felt as though the eyes had pressed into my own while he did this. He would say that the men's gaze had a captivating quality. During the hypnosis sessions, whenever the problem arose, Barney would say things like, "those eyes," which is evidence of how frightening he would find the weird eyes these equally strange individuals had on their faces. He and Betty were escorted up a wide path that went from the enormous disc-shaped craft, much like in Betty's nightmares. They would separate once they were on board. At this point, Barney would lie on an examination table with his eyes largely closed. He would describe their language as nothing more than weird mumbles, which is another information he would share with Betty. On the other hand, when they spoke to him in English, he was able to understand them. They would both remember, too, that the being's jaws seemed immobile. In particular, Barney would characterize their communication style as thought transference. This is a little but potentially significant detail. This term is said to have been used because Barney was unaware of the concept of telepathy and what it was. In summary, it may be a detail that adds credibility to the story. After being led to his vehicle, Barney observed the ship departing. Betty's regression recollections would often coincide with those of her spouse. Many of her discoveries would really resemble the vivid hallucinations she had during the strange 5 days after the experience. As in her dream, she was taken away by the group leader. He would examine beneath her arm, taking skin samples and aiming a big lens at it. Additionally, they would take samples from her hair, nails, and ears. She would also remember having a lengthy needle put into her navel. This was a pregnancy test, the leader would tell her, and he was shocked by the anguish it seemed to cause Betty. It seems that the anguish instantly ended when the commander covered her eyes with his palm. Betty would get more emotional and agitated during these times in her regression sessions. She would get so upset during one session that Simon would cut it short and pull her out of hypnosis right away. The star map. Betty would remember the star map from her dreams during her hypnosis sessions. She had questioned the thing about their origins during her inspection. The commander then displayed a three-dimensional star map that was probably holographic. Betty claims that the leader would explain to her that the 12 glowing dots were stars and that the lines connecting them represented pathways or instructions from their star system to other systems. Simon would advise Betty to construct this star map when she emerged from the hypnosis session. That's exactly what she would do. Additionally, some people view it as yet another important piece of proof that the Hill's assertions are true. The case is referred to as the Zeta Reticuli incident by certain academics, and the reason for such is the star map indicated above, which Betty created at Simon's request. The striking thing about Betty's star map is that it would resemble the Zeta star system almost exactly. Many UFO researchers claim that this drawing will lead to the discovery of this star system, which we were not aware of at the time. It's quite improbable that Betty Hill, who had no interest in astronomy at all, would have known about it, even with her above-average education. Most definitely not in the level of detail she would portray. After the sketch was widely distributed in The Interrupted Journey, Marjorie Fish, an Ohio schoolteacher and amateur astronomer, would get in touch with the Hills in 1966. She thought the glowing dots Betty saw on the holographic model within the craft might be able to be identified as a real star system. She would start a 6-year study that would eventually lead to the creation of what is now known as the Fish model. Marjorie Fish would create what is now known as the Fish model in 1972, 3 years after the untimely passing of Barney Hill and the culmination of 6 years of work. She had created more than 20 three-dimensional models that searched the star systems 65 million light-years away from Earth. In addition, she would physically search and take pictures of the night sky for hundreds of hours. She would observe different star systems from different perspectives from these. She would eventually decide on the Zeta star system outlined before. The similarities were incredible. The fact that just one specific star system matched Betty's depiction would be very startling to Fish. She acknowledged that she had anticipated finding a number of viable candidates. She believed that Betty and Barney's story, as they presented it, was probably true and authentic because there was only one unique match. Stranger still, Fish would imply that it was believed that there were planets orbiting each of the 12 stars that might harbor life. Additionally, the map included all of these stars in the area believed to have planets that host life. It would seem that there are at least 12 planets in this star system that may support life if Betty's star chart is correct, and the Hills' kidnappers were actually extraterrestrials from this system. Benjamin Simon would write in his case conclusions that the Hills saw an unnamed and experimental military vehicle. He would go on to say that Barney's hypnosis sessions were influenced by Betty's conflicted mental state, which led to the 5 nights of weird dreams, even though this is a bit of an ambiguous conclusion. Simon would admit that the encounter was a very unusual circumstance, but one that produced a single psychological anomaly. Memorandum 6751 is an interesting document that was released online by the FBI. It is quite a challenge to come across, but the aforementioned document is part of a vast collection of thousands, although it stands out due to its distinct nature. What sets it apart is its intricate exploration of enigmatic entities, advanced technological advancements, and intriguing gateways. The documentation was released in 2015 and has been used by researchers into the unknown as proof that we know of advanced beings. The document reads as follows. San Diego, California, July 8, 1947. A memorandum of importance. This memorandum is respectfully addressed to certain scientists or distinction to important astronomical and military authorities, to a number of public officials, and to the FOM publications. The writer has little expectation that everything of importance will be accomplished by this gesture. Nevertheless, it seems a public duty to make it available. The present writer has several university degrees and was formerly a university department head. A very serious situation may develop at any time with regard to the flying saucers. If one of those should be attacked, the attacking plane will almost certainly be destroyed. In the public mind, this might create near panic and international suspicion. The principal data concerning these craft is now at hand and must be offered, no matter how fantastic and unintelligible it may seem to mind not previously instructed in timing of this type. 1. Part of the discs carry crews, others are under remote control. 2. Their mission is peaceful. The visitors contemplate settling on this planet. 3. These visitors are human-like but much larger in size. 4. They come from their own world. 5. They do not come from any planet as we use this word, but from another planet which interpenetrates with our own and is not perceptible to us. 6. The bodies of the visitors and the craft also automatically materialize on entering the vibratory ratio of our dense matter. 7. The disk possesses a type of radiant energy or a ray which will easily disintegrate any attacking ship. They re-enter the Earth at will and so simply disappear from our vision without a trace. 8. The region from which they come is not the astral plane, but corresponds to the lokes or tails. Students of this matter will understand these terms. 9. They probably cannot be reached by radio, but probably can be by radar, if a signal system can be devised for that. We give information and warnings and can do no more. Let the newcomers be treated with every kindness. Unless the discs are withdrawn, a redacted with which our culture and science are incapable of redacted. A heavy responsibility rests upon those who are in authority to understand this matter." End quote. An interview with an individual named Billy featured on the next page, in which it details a boy called Billy who happened to photograph one of these strange objects, and which details that afterwards a strange agent decided to pay him a visit. The document reads as follows. The photograph in this clipping is alleged to represent a flying disc, which was observed by Billy Turenstein, a Norfolk schoolboy who was successful in photographing the object with his small camera. Billy was interviewed on August 8, 1947 by Special Agent Redacted, at which time Billy informed that the original negative was given by him to a Mr. Brown of the Photo Craftsman's Service. Billy advised that he has an agreement with Mr. Brown, whereby the latter will share equally in any profits derived from the use of the negative by commercial firms or newspapers. As of August 1947, Billy has not received any remuneration for the use of this negative. He informed me that he was sitting on the front porch of his apartment, which is located on the 3rd floor at 410 West. He had read numerous newspaper articles pertaining to flying discs and decided to sit on his porch in the hopes of seeing one and attempting to photograph it. On July 8, 1947, Billy observed a large black object moving rapidly through space, proceeding from the southwest to a northeast direction. He said the black object was followed by 2 smaller objects, which also proceeded in the same direction. Billy explained that the objects were moving at a very fast speed, which appeared to him to be much faster than the speed of an aeroplane, and further that the objects appeared to be extremely high. He said that they were much higher than the average plane travels in the city of Norfolk, and appeared to be above the clouds. Billy was unable to state what the black objects represented. He said, though, that the objects were at such a great distance from him that it was not necessary that he raised his head in order to see them from his porch. He immediately turned around to obtain his camera and estimated that it took him approximately 20 seconds, at which time the discs were almost directly over his apartment, and it was necessary that he stoop and look up almost perpendicular in order to obtain the photograph, which accounts for the porch railing being shown. Billy pointed out that the day on which he took the photograph, the weather was hazy and somewhat cloudy. End quote. After this, Billy went on to say that once the object got closer, he could see that it was black and in the shape of a disc. What's interesting about these documents is that there's so many of them detailing the same thing, strange crafts that have been observed by researchers and scientists. It's documents like this that have led people to say that we've been studying these crafts for nearly 100 years now, yet the public are still being kept in the dark about what these things are, where they are coming from, and how they are able to achieve the things they do. The phenomenon of unidentified flying objects has captured the human imagination for centuries, leading many to believe that these enigmatic objects have visited Earth throughout history. One of the earliest recorded UFO sightings dates back to ancient Egypt, a civilization known for its meticulous documentation of events. Hieroglyphs on the famous Tuli papyrus, which dates back to the reign of Thutmose III in the 15th century BCE, describe a strange celestial occurrence. According to the text, fiery discs were seen in the sky, emitting a brilliant light and exhibiting unusual movements. The sighting was recorded with great detail, including the location, time of day, and the reactions of witnesses. This early account suggests that UFOs have been a part of human history for millennia, raising questions about their significance and the nature of their visits to ancient civilizations. The Annunciation of Ezekiel. In the Hebrew Bible's Book of Ezekiel, there is a famous account often cited as an early UFO encounter. Ezekiel, a prophet living during the Babylonian exile around 593 BCE, described a visionary experience in which he witnessed a wheel within a wheel descending from the sky. The text goes on to describe the appearance of strange beings and a vivid, otherworldly encounter. While interpretations of Ezekiel's vision vary, some researchers argue that his description bears similarities to modern UFO sightings, with the wheel within a wheel possibly representing a flying, saucer-like object. This early account adds to the intrigue surrounding UFOs' presence in historical texts and beliefs. The Nuremberg Celestial Battle. On April 14, 1561, the residents of Nuremberg, Germany, witnessed a baffling celestial event that became known as the Nuremberg Celestial Battle. The event involved the appearance of various aerial phenomena, including cylindrical objects, crosses, and spheres, engaged in what appeared to be a fierce battle in the skies. Witnesses described the objects emitting smoke and fire as they engaged in this mysterious aerial encounter. The Nuremberg Celestial Battle was documented in the local newspaper, and artists of the time produced detailed woodcut illustrations depicting the event. While some explanations suggest natural phenomena or atmospheric anomalies, others interpret the event as a possible early UFO sighting, raising questions about the nature of these aerial objects. The Foo Fighters of World War II. During World War II, military pilots on both sides of the conflict reported encounters with mysterious aerial objects known as Foo Fighters. These objects were often described as glowing orbs or spheres that followed aircraft, exhibited extraordinary speeds and maneuvers, and emitted strange lights. The sightings were reported in the war diaries of various Allied and Axis pilots, raising questions about their origin and purpose. While some explanations have suggested natural atmospheric phenomena or secret military technology, the true nature of these early UFO sightings remains elusive. The history of UFO sightings stretches back millennia, with accounts recorded in ancient civilizations, religious texts, historical records, and military archives. These early encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena challenge our understanding of the cosmos and our place within it. While skepticism and debate continue to surround these accounts, they provide a compelling glimpse into the enduring mystery of UFOs and their presence throughout human history. The study of UFOs represents a quest for answers, a desire to unravel the enigma of these unidentified visitors, and an exploration of the unknown that spans across the ages. The recently discovered Black Pyramid in Alaska has become the center of attention due to its remarkable features. This colossal structure, measuring a staggering 550 feet, is constructed entirely from black stone, adding to its enigmatic allure. What sets it apart is not just its imposing size, but also its ability to generate an immense amount of energy, comparable to that of a power plant. It's reported that it functions as some sort of energy-generating facility, defying conventional norms. According to a former US official, hidden within the vast expanse of the Alaskan wilderness, there may exist an enormous and mysterious Black Pyramid. It is believed that this pyramid is deeply buried underground and carefully concealed by a top-secret government installation. Over the past few years, Tom DeLonge has been diligently investigating and presenting evidence regarding various peculiar occurrences in our world. Recently, his remarks regarding the enigmatic Black Pyramid in Alaska have captured significant attention. Tom has revealed some fascinating insights into this extraordinary structure. To provide some background, it is believed that scientists, geologists, and military personnel have stumbled upon a colossal pyramid hidden beneath the Alaskan terrain, surpassing even the size of the Giza pyramid. Back in 1992, researchers working in the vicinity detected an inexplicable anomaly buried beneath the surface. In an attempt to gain deeper insight, they employed seismic recording equipment, which ultimately confirmed the existence of a pyramid-shaped edifice of considerable proportions directly beneath their feet. The revelation of this astonishing finding has left audiences astounded and eager for further exploration and understanding of this mysterious construct in Alaska. According to Tom, there exists an enigmatic pyramid that lies underground and has been a subject of study for several decades. Interestingly, this pyramid surpasses the size of the renowned Giza pyramids. Tom is determined to ascertain its precise location. It is worth noting that Tom has a connection with a high-ranking individual from the Pentagon who had a meeting with one of the leading defense contractors responsible for examining the pyramid. The outcome of their encounter revealed that they have now comprehended its purpose. It is strangely inactive and possesses the fascinating ability to influence consciousness. Curiously, an earthquake occurred, causing seismic waves that were detected by various seismographs. It was during this event that a peculiar anomaly was observed. As the shock waves propagated through the land, they encountered some kind of obstruction or structure, leading to their disturbance. In response, extensive excavation work was initiated, involving the creation of underground tunnels and elevator shafts, which have been serving as a base for further exploration and research. Significantly, there was a fleeting moment when the news media briefly covered the topic, shedding light on the pyramid and its findings. However, curiously, all related information suddenly disappeared, and media outlets were instructed not to mention the pyramid again. Despite this, Tom remains resolute in his stance. There is indeed a pyramid, and its extensive study continues to intrigue and captivate researchers. One geologist, namely Douglas A. Muchler, played an integral role in the recordings. He explained that an explosion took place in the vicinity, initially intended for mapping the Earth's crust. However, the resulting recordings unveiled a startling revelation: a colossal pyramid silently resting within the depths of the Earth. Tom, as previously mentioned, brought in a news crew to cover this groundbreaking discovery. Curiosity piqued, Douglas attempted to reconnect with the news crew to gauge the impact of the story. Much to his surprise, he was informed that the story had never been aired, and that no copies of the broadcast existed. Furthermore, he was cautioned against pursuing further inquiries. In an attempt to retrieve the vanished story, Douglas embarked on a quest, reaching out to acquaintances and loved ones to determine if anyone had managed to capture the broadcast. Astonishingly, while the story had seemingly disappeared, several individuals affirmed its existence by vividly recounting specific details and confirming that they had indeed witnessed the astonishing findings. It turns out that the mysterious discovery was only covered by Anchorage's Channel 13. Douglas then emailed Linda Moulton Howe, an American investigative journalist who has a passion for the unknown. The email reads as follows: "My name is Douglas A. Muchler, CW2, USA retired, and during my service tour in Alaska, I was informed of a pyramid under the land in Alaska. There is other information concerning this that came to my attention after it was reported to us in 1992. I have tried to pass this info to others, but have not heard any response to my information. I assure you I am telling you the truth about this, and I think that this is being kept quiet by our government, as the news was buried the very next day after it was brought to my attention. If you can help me get this info out to you, please call me so I can talk to you about this." The whole story is pretty interesting, and this can be verified with your contacts. I'm assured of that, as I do not have them, and came up with 0 from the news people there. I'll tell you the whole story if you are interested. I've only contacted a couple of people but have not heard back from any of them. I'm wondering if my emails are getting through to them, or is this an old story that has no interest to news reporters? Thank you for your time in this matter. Douglas A. Muchler." End quote. Due to the limited availability of information on this subject, and the reluctance of only a few purported military officials to come forward, speculation has arisen suggesting that the enigmatic structure in question may be an advanced pyramid crafted by an exceptionally intelligent civilization. Beyond the structural brilliance, recent discoveries have unearthed electronic anomalies inside these enigmatic structures, opening a window into the possibility of advanced ancient technology. Interestingly, the precise construction methods and the technological sophistication involved have remained subjects of debate and fascination. In recent years, modern technology has enabled researchers to explore the pyramids in unprecedented ways. Among the most intriguing findings are the electronic anomalies detected within these ancient edifices. These anomalies, consisting of electromagnetic and acoustic phenomena, challenge our conventional understanding of ancient construction techniques and the capabilities of the civilizations that built them. One of the most significant discoveries pertains to the Great Pyramid of Giza, also known as the Pyramid of Khufu. Researchers have detected electromagnetic anomalies, specifically within the pyramid's chambers and passageways. The King's Chamber, located at the heart of the pyramid, has exhibited particularly unusual behavior. Electromagnetic readings within the chamber have been found to be higher than the natural background levels outside the pyramid, suggesting the presence of some form of electronic energy source. The day was clear and crisp above the vast expanse of Yellowstone National Park. In the heart of the park, a network of live cameras captured the breathtaking beauty of nature's spectacle for the world to see. But on this particular day, one of those cameras captured something that would defy explanation. It was a typical day, and many who had viewed these cameras had grown accustomed to monitoring the park's wildlife, geological wonders, and the ever-changing landscapes. At first, those who were watching the live camera noticed a subtle glimmer on the horizon, a shimmering presence that seemed out of place in the natural world. As the camera operators zoomed in to investigate, they were greeted by an awe-inspiring sight. Soaring gracefully across the azure sky was a colossal, orange-glowing bird that matched the descriptions of the mythical thunderbird. Its wings stretched wide, each feather blazing with an ethereal orange luminescence that bathed the surrounding landscape in a warm, enchanting glow. Those who saw the photographs couldn't believe their eyes, and their hearts raced with excitement as they continued to track the bird's majestic flight. The thunderbird, as it had come to be known, soared above the geysers and canyons, leaving a trail of sparkling radiance in its wake. News of the remarkable event spread quickly throughout social media, where many claimed that they had seen a thunderbird soaring above Yellowstone National Park. Many commented that they couldn't explain what the creature was, and suggested that this bird could have been responsible for the thunderbird stories. Some believed the thunderbird was a natural phenomenon, an extraordinary species of bird that had never been documented. Others, steeped in Native American folklore, whispered that it might indeed be the mythical thunderbird, a powerful and legendary creature revered by indigenous cultures across North America. Many who have seen the images said that they've never seen a bird like this before, and further added that Yellowstone National Park live cameras are clear, so ruled out the possibility that this was a camera artifact. As of right now, there's many who believe that this could be evidence of the mythical thunderbird. In the rich tapestry of Native American mythology, the thunderbird occupies a special place, a creature of immense power, revered for its significance across many indigenous cultures. The thunderbird is more than a mythical creature. It is a symbol deeply intertwined with the spiritual and cultural fabric of Native American societies. The thunderbird's origins can be traced to various Native American tribes across North America, each with its own unique interpretation and mythology. While the specific details vary, certain common elements define the thunderbird across these diverse traditions. Generally depicted as a massive bird with wings that span the sky, the thunderbird is believed to have the power to summon storms, including thunder and lightning, through the flapping of its wings. One notable variation of the thunderbird legend comes from the Ojibwa Chippewa people of the Great Lakes region. In their tradition, the thunderbird is seen as a gigantic bird with feathers capable of creating thunder by clapping them together. The Ojibwa believe that the thunderbird is responsible for shaping the landscape through its battles with the underwater spirits, known as Mishipeshu, or underwater panthers. This conflict between the thunderbird and underwater spirits is emblematic of the struggle between natural forces and spiritual beings in Native American cosmology. Another variation of the thunderbird legend is found among the Lakota Sioux of the Great Plains. In Lakota mythology, the thunderbird is often depicted as a powerful and benevolent spirit that brings life-giving rain to the earth. The thunderbird's role as a rainbringer reflects its status as a vital figure in agricultural societies, where rainfall is essential for crops to thrive. The thunderbird's cultural significance extends beyond its role in creating and controlling natural phenomena. It serves as a symbol of power, protection, and spirituality in Native American communities. The thunderbird is often associated with the sacred number 4, the 4 winds, 4 seasons, and the 4 cardinal directions, underscoring its importance in guiding and protecting people in their journeys through life. In some tribes, the thunderbird is considered a guardian spirit, and individuals may seek visions or spiritual experiences to establish a personal connection with this powerful entity. Native American warriors, in particular, often invoked the thunderbird for protection and strength before going into battle, believing that its majestic presence would shield them from harm. The thunderbird also plays a prominent role in traditional ceremonies and dances, where intricate masks and regalia are crafted to honor and represent this mythical creature. The dances associated with the thunderbird are often accompanied by rhythmic drumming and chanting, creating a powerful and spiritual atmosphere. The thunderbird's influence transcends the boundaries of time and culture, and it continues to be a vital part of contemporary Native American identity. Despite the challenges faced by indigenous communities throughout history, the thunderbird remains a symbol of resilience and cultural pride. Many Native American artists and craftspeople incorporate thunderbird imagery into their work, connecting their creations with the ancestral traditions that have shaped their heritage. Furthermore, the thunderbird's influence extends to the broader American cultural landscape. In recent years, the thunderbird has gained recognition and respect from non-indigenous individuals and communities, serving as a symbol of the enduring legacy and wisdom of Native American cultures. The thunderbird's representation in art, literature, and popular culture underscores its significance as a bridge between indigenous and non-indigenous communities. Although these types of discoveries are interesting, there is a darker side to national parks. Over 250,000 individuals are reported missing every year, with estimates of actual missing persons cases that are left unreported, pushing that total to more than an expected 300,000 cases annually. With that many reports, it is no wonder that a vast majority of these cases are left unsolved. However, every now and then, there are a series of missing cases that emerge that are so peculiar they become the subject of internet theories and impossible to explain theories. Known as the Missing 411, there appears to be a substantial number of missing persons cases relating to the disappearances of individuals from national parks. In fact, many of these missing 411 cases are believed to not be investigated too deeply, as some form of supernatural or paranormal cover-up takes place in these undisturbed locations. According to the official missing persons report, experienced hiker and outdoorsman Patrick Amon would suddenly be reported missing by close family and friends on the evening of the 15th of June, back in 2012. Patrick Amon's sudden vanishing would take place while he was camping within the small town of Manton, located in California, which rested adjacent to a large span of unexplored open wilderness. At the time of his disappearance, Patrick was 40 years old, and he was engaged in a hiking expedition with 2 of his closest companions, 2 men by the name of Damon Baker and Danny Finch. Their exploration would take the 3 men to the foothills, nestled just below the majestic Mount Lassen National Park, at an elevation of approximately 3,200 feet. The terrain in the area was characterized by dense vegetation, adorned with towering trees that made aerial surveillance difficult throughout the entire region. According to both Damon and Danny, as the day waned and the sun began its descent, the trio of hikers made the last-second decision to venture in separate directions temporarily. According to the 2 companions, Patrick appeared to have been disinterested in returning with them to the campsite and seemed reluctant to end their hike. Instead, Patrick began to travel on his own, before telling his friends he'd meet up with them at their parked vehicles later in the day. Patrick, perhaps driven by a sense of adventure, chose to wander off on his own, while Damon and Danny agreed to regroup at their parked vehicles later. However, as the appointed time arrived, Patrick failed to return, causing mounting concern among his friends. Alarmed by Patrick's absence, they promptly alerted the United States Forest Service, which swiftly coordinated efforts with the Tehama County Sheriff's Department to initiate a search operation. Deputies diligently scoured the vicinity throughout the weekend, meticulously combing through every inch of the area where Patrick was last seen by his two friends and down winding nearby trails that stretched out from the location. Despite their exhaustive efforts, however, the search yielded no concrete evidence as to where Patrick Amon had disappeared off to, or any indications of a crime or attack having taken place. The absence of tangible clues shrouded the circumstances surrounding Patrick's puzzling disappearance in an unsettling veil of uncertainty. The Reading Record Searchlight, a local newspaper, published an article on the 18th of June, less than 3 full times into the search and rescue operation, shedding light on the perplexing case. It stated, "Searchers found no evidence of violence, but the lack of evidence has cast suspicions on the circumstances of Amon's disappearance." The region where Patrick vanished was dotted with scattered homes and crisscrossed by paved roads, enabling access to the surrounding landscape, making it difficult for Amon to have suddenly become lost without finding his way out of the area by stumbling into an occupied residence or nearby roadway. In their quest to unravel the mystery, the search teams employed a diverse range of resources, including helicopters from the California Highway Patrol, specially trained canines, and dedicated volunteers. Regrettably, these extensive efforts yielded little more than a few fleeting footprints, offering no definitive leads or breakthroughs. Undeterred by the absence of progress, Patrick's family took matters into their own hands. On the 23rd of June, 10 days following Patrick's disappearance, Amon's family enlisted the services of Air Shasta, a private helicopter company, to conduct an aerial search of the area where Patrick had disappeared. During the flight, the keen-eyed pilot noticed a flurry of bird activity in a particular location and swiftly directed ground searchers to investigate further. It was at this moment that the unknown fate of Patrick Amon took a tragic turn. According to investigators, Patrick Amon was discovered amidst dense undergrowth, concealed within heavy brush just 200 yards away from the roadside, near the intersection of Ponderosa Way and Forward Road. Preliminary assessments by the deputies involved in the recovery operation indicated no glaring signs of violence inflicted upon the body. However, the placement of overgrown bush and thickets made it difficult to explain how his body ended up in such a tightly hidden area. Investigators made special note that the thorns alone would have made the thickets an impossibly uncomfortable place to camp through the night, and the depth at which Patrick was placed in the bushes seemed unnatural for a person to have ended up in. The Corning Observer, another local publication, released an article on June 26th, providing additional insight into the circumstances surrounding Patrick's untimely demise. In the article, Lieutenant David Greer, the on-scene commander for the Tehama County Sheriff's Office, expressed his observation, saying that it looks like he crawled into the area where his body was found. "It is hard for me to believe if he was conscious when the search was being conducted, that he wouldn't have called out for help." Deputies confirmed that Patrick had been in possession of a wallet filled with cash, and outwardly he showed no visible signs of injury. This realization only added to the profound sense of bafflement surrounding the search and rescue efforts. A sense of disappointment permeated the community, as expressed by Doherty, who remarked, "Why search teams didn't find Amon sooner? I'm at a loss to explain." In the days that followed, an analysis of the search operation revealed a disconcerting truth. Dozens of searchers had unknowingly walked past Patrick's concealed body during both informal and formal search endeavors. Despite the involvement of a helicopter from the California Highway Patrol, which had been equipped with forward-looking infrared technology, the lifeless form of Patrick Amon eluded detection, remaining concealed merely 100 yards away from his last known whereabouts. Even the canine teams, renowned for their heightened senses and exceptional tracking abilities, appeared to have traversed the area without reacting to Patrick's presence.